Welcome everyone to Seeing Jazz, the February edition. I'm Hrayr Attarian. I'm a JJA member and I'm an amateur photographer myself. I do primarily street photography. Today we have Bill King with us from Toronto, Canada, who has a storied life and career. There's a memoir I just discovered today that was published in November that I read the blurb about. It sounds very interesting, definitely on my to-read list. Welcome, Bill, and if you can just tell us a little bit your forays primarily into photography and music photography, and I have your photos and I can share them with you. With everybody to discuss individually.
Okay, my first photograph that I ever took was of the lighthouse in Hermosa Beach in California. I went to California in 1966 with some friends from the neighboring town of mine in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana, southern Indiana, but I live in Kentucky. And I bought an Instamatic, a Kodak Instamatic. I had no idea what cameras were or anything, but I bought this Instamatic and I carried it around. I thought the 12 shots mean 12 shots over a year. I had no idea that you took more than one shot. But I discovered the other day that the first shot that I took of anything jazz was probably 1966. And it was staying in Manhattan Beach and walking along the beach, and I brought the camera along. And I talk about this in my new book, that I took a photograph of the facade, the front of the lighthouse. Then I went and paid the $3 to get in, and it was the Gerald Wilson Big Band. It was fantastic. But I did not have the courage to lift the camera to photograph the band. So it just sat next to me on the church pew. And then I carried the camera around with me, but I never took anything of people because it was just, I just felt intimidated by taking photos of people. So in my new book that just came out, I had this second photograph of an artist as such. It's when I was working with Linda Ronstadt. And it was also Lee Underwood, who went on to be an editor for Downbeat, I guess, in the 70s or something like that too. We went across the country to get the gig with Linda. And there's one photo of me taking a picture of Lee and Linda in her little sports car, and she's taking him back to where he was staying in Santa Monica. Now, the only other thing, photography, I picked up a Yashica SLR in a sort of a variety store in San Francisco on Geary Street on the corner. And I was playing there, and boy, there's the shot. And I was playing in North Beach with this soul band called Kent the Candidates, and I bought it for $25, but I still didn't know how to load or roll of film. So the guy says, "You don't look like you know anything." So he loaded the roll of film, and the roll of film stayed in for quite a while. And then I started touring, working with other artists, and everyone from Chuck Berry and so forth, but I would never bring the camera along. And then we moved to California in 1976, and I took up music directing for Martha Reeves and the Pointer Sisters. And I started playing with the camera in Hollywood all the time, and I would buy slide film, and I would run it down to this shop where I could get it done for like a couple dollars, get all of these rows done. So we went out on a tour with VSOP as the opening act for 30 dates. And so I got next to Herbie Hancock and Tony Williams and everything. And I took some slides from there. And it wasn't until going through all the images over the many, many years that I came across a couple of slides that worked out. And that is it right there. That's them off the stage at the Greek Theater in Berkeley, California. And that image look infrared by now, all the years, and there was scratches, pops, and everything. But I took my time and I went through and got everything out of there, and then worked through some of the new programs that are AI just to restore the image, Wayne Shorter and them. But that was sort of the beginning of it. And also, you know, at the time, it was just getting past the fear of lifting the camera towards somebody else. And that was not in my makeup. I was a musician on stage, and much of the time I'm in the background. So basically, that's it.
By the way, everyone, I put in the link to the new book in the chat. So you primarily played the piano, correct?
Yeah. Then I moved up to music director for a lot of groups over the years. Mm-hmm. But the cameras, I would put alongside of me if I could take a photo. Right?
Take a picture, yes. And what was the first actual event where you primarily took photos? You were there as a photographer.
Well, first let's go. The first was I started a magazine called the Jazz Report magazine in 1988, and with that came other photographers who were great photographers, Paul Hoffler, John Reeves. And once we got on the newsstands, we would get calls from real photographers wanting to submit photos for the magazine. And I remember that we'd have to go through all the photos and figure out what we wanted, but we were getting invited everywhere. So I went to the Montreal Jazz Festival probably 30 years ago. And I had bought one of those Nikons. It was like one of the first Nikon point and shoots. And like an idiot, I just shot off a frame of Chick Corea from the middle of the audience, and like they got beat up by security. And they were going to take the camera away. But then they came over and said, okay, you don't know what you're doing, so don't do that again. Well, I got home and took it into the darkroom, and it came back and it was fine. And so I actually had something to put in the magazine. So from that point on, it was all about access, right? So we got access to having a magazine open the door to the world. And so we started inviting to our concerts, and we began traveling. And as we did so, we would meet people like Enid Farber. We met Enid, and I would hang around by and bug her, what are you doing there? And, you'd ask questions all the time, but you would also be taking photos and evaluating the work that you were doing, trying to. Then it was a matter of just getting out and taking photos all the time in clubs, things locally. And then a lot of going to the dark room. My wife went to Ryerson, and so she got into the dark room. We started printing for ourselves, learning to print. And it was just a matter of really hanging around with photographers then. It was they were a shifty lot, that group right there. So musicians were shifty before. No, it was what it was, and I talked about it recently. Was we went from being local, where you're a musician working with a lot of people into these things like this, where you walk into this other world of photography, where you become a membership in a different group of people who see the world and have a connection. And we all talk the same thing. We talk gear, we ask questions, and we show each other our work and what we were doing. So it was just like this amazing community.
Nice. And coming to your most recent book that came out a few days ago, is that a collaboration with your wife?
Not photo-wise.
Okay.
What it was is that she's did about 16 books for different people for a variety of things, just variety of herself too. We've done books on ourselves, self-published, but what happened is the last book that came back from Blurb that she did was a 12 by 12, and it was for a very important man in Canada. And they wanted, we as a gift for him on his birthday. So it's family, it's his history, and we gathered all the folks, and she put it together. It just looked fantastic. So when it came back, I went, the best thing about this book is the black and white, how I printed up. It just knocked me out. And so she knew which choice of paper to do. And so I decided, I had spent 4 months over the summer going through archives and scanning and everything. And I put together 1,200 images I picked through the years. And every day working on them, getting them in the right shape. And so I picked like 130 out of these to put in the book. I thought it's time to do it again. Yeah. Because the paper's right? And the binding and everything's right.
And do you want to talk a little bit about the photos that you shared with me?
Anything.
Do you want, okay, do you want us to go alphabetically
You
by
can do.
artist? Okay, let's do that.
Okay. Oh, yes, Abby Lincoln. This was early on. I think this is early 90s when I photographed her. And she was in Toronto, I think, at the time for this, either that or Montreal. And it was just a great show. Just one of those great shows. This is one on film that, you know, maybe there were 3 frames. She wasn't happy. She didn't want anybody photographing her. These were the orders, but you know, in these kind of situations, if you get 3 frames off and something stands out, you've done enough. And I really like this image of her because she sounded amazing. She may have been with Hank Jones. I can't remember who she was with at the time, but it was just a great concert.
Nice. And one thing I noticed that sometimes I've read and I've seen photos of singers particularly, where the facial expression captured,
Yes,
out of context looks odd, and the artists themselves don't like it. But in your photos that I looked over multiple times since you shared them with me, looks like every expression you've captured is a flattering one, even though, and it is not posed.
no, that's the different things. I was looking through a great book by Norman Seeff, who I met, a great photographer, and he did a lot of the album covers, right? During the 70s. He's fantastic, and all his stuff is posed, but in such a way. But what Norman did in reading the book was he would spend a lot of time with him, because you have to get past this, the nervousness, and try to find a moment. Well, when you're doing music as a musician, you kind of recognize the moment, because you follow the flow of the moment, you follow the body, and you follow if they're soloing, if they're singing, and if you've done it enough time, you can read where they're going. So everything in this book that I published here, all the expressions are a moment. And it's that special moment that is them, and it's not posed. They don't know I'm taking it, because mostly I got a long lens and they don't even see me, right? So, you know, the lights, they can't even see it, but I am with them. You know what I mean? This when you're got your camera and you're looking through the viewfinder and you're looking at it's you and them, and you develop a relationship. So you are musically in tune with them, and they're just performing for you. That's what you get to thinking. So what you got to do is be true, you know.
Like Dante in the church in Beatrix, when he always thought he was writing the poetry for her, even though she wasn't aware of his presence.
You've got it.
Next one is, again, we're going alphabetically. I am not familiar with this artist.
Oh, she's amazing. So this is the great opera singer, the Italian opera singer, but very popular. This is that great song, Italian song, "Time to da 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 da, time today," or "Time to say goodbye." All right, that's the great. I think Sarah Brightman did it with you know, the blind opera singer. They were
Andrea Bocelli.
Bocelli and her doing the duet of the great, one of the greatest, most popular songs ever. And Sarah Brightman did a recording of it, and so did Ada here. She's I think she's Russian or whatever. She also recorded it too, and she was amazing. So this was the David Foster Gala, and David Foster had talent at this gala. It's probably one of the biggest galas you can. We got lucky to have seats with somebody who put up a lot of money for those seats. And I brought the cameras along, and he played along with us, me and Christine. He let us. So I videoed this performance, and it's got, I don't know, 1.5 million videos. And I did it with just the Lumix, small Lumix, right? The video, but also at the same time, I captured a few photos of them. And this moment, man, this is that moment. And I love this because the conductor's in the background and the wand is moving. She is so in the movie, and oh my goodness, is she good. And when you see the video online, you get an idea.
Al Green.
Oh yeah, the best. This is the end of his performance. So at the end, Al Green gives away roses. And
instead of receiving them.
Yes, yeah, he gave away roses.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the people waiting to receive and wanting to receive the roses after an amazing performance. Boy, Al Jarreau. Now I have photographed Al Jarreau probably since 1992. And in fact, prior to that, 1978, we opened for Al Jarreau in Santa Monica with John Clemmer when I was playing with him. And I got to talk to him a bit, and he was doing all kinds of exercises and body things outside of the Santa Monica auditorium or whatever it was. And I just found him a great guy, just the greatest. So this is one of the performances somewhere in between. I don't know the exact date on that. And I was there for one of his last, I emceed one of his last performances just before he passed away too. So he was just a lovely man and a great, great performer. With this guy, this is, for 30 years, I was a programmer for the Beaches International Jazz Festival. And we would have bands on the street, like a New Orleans style thing, plus the bands on stage. This goes back probably 20 years ago. And this young gentleman right now has already won 2 or 3 Grammys. This is Alex Cuba. And this is him playing with his brother. And they were called the Puentes brothers. And they played Odanis and Alex, but their actual name was Puentes. And he changed his name to Alex Cuba. He's from Cuba. And he's had an enormous career since, Latin Artist of the Year, and the music that he does. He is just tremendous. But there's always this is on the medium format camera because I got crazy about the Rolleiflex for a while. And this was the only camera I packed it around because I love the square and I love just playing with the dials and the film. And this was taken on.
So this is a film, not digital.
No, this isn't digital. This is film. Yeah.
Yeah. Danica comments that part of the expressiveness of your photographs are your focus on the musician's hands. And wanted to see your comment about that.
Okay, when we were apprenticing, Christine and I were apprenticing for Paul Hoffler, one of the all-time great photographers. He had like 200 photos in Ken Burns Jazz. He has some of the iconic Billie Holidays and everything. One of the criticisms that came back when we first started showing them, he said to us, "Why do you amputate people?" And we, as beginning photographers, we went, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Where's the hands?" And so, and also then in culture of India and stuff with dance and everything, I learned a lot about how hands tell a story in dance. We have so much, we've had such a rich, diverse city here in Toronto that in the 70s and 80s, I would watch the Bollywood films in the morning and all the films from India. And I really focused in on the dance, and I understood that when the women and the men and the hands, how important the hands were to the overall movement. And that wherever the hands and the fingers were in this, a story was being told.
Yeah.
And it kind of sunk in, you know?
Yeah.
This is Alex Pangman and Jeff Healey, the great guitarist Jeff Healey, who put down the guitar and began playing trumpet, but they were a number probably 30 years ago. And he's been, I think he passed about 10 years ago, but they were a group. She was in their group, and she's on Jazz FM now as a broadcaster. But wonderful does wonderful turn of the century style music, right? And so
And she's a vocalist.
she's a vocalist. Yeah, and this is on film too.
Yeah.
Alicia Keys.
Mhm.
This is down in Barbados in, I guess, 2003 or so. And she kind of like, she was kind of tough on everybody. She, would be photographed. She didn't want the press near her or anything like this. She put all sorts of rules down. When you're traveling with a pack of 60 journalists, you get kind of like, okay, I'll play the game because we've met everybody. We just had Patti LaBelle, and we just had so many Gladys Knight, and they're all really great with us. Anita Baker, and she's just telling everybody, don't come here, don't get off the beach, and all the kind of weird stuff that went down. But you get your 3 minutes, and you take your photos. And I just found her in some. I found her, quite photogenic,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, she's very young at the time. So this is at the beginning of the career. She may have had that one hit or one or two hits out. So she's making the rounds, but the set was like 45 minutes, and it kind of ticked people off, right? It was just too short.
Mm-hmm.
They had to get a lot of money to see this young newcomer.
Yeah.
But I did like the eyes and the lightning eyes. This young lady is amazing. She's new to the scene, from Montreal. Angelique,
I just heard her album. I just listened to it the other day.
What'd you think?
Amazing stuff. And she not only plays the bass, also keyboards and
slide guitar.
Yeah, slide guitar. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she has two sisters that are fantastic. And this young lady is a star. I told her recently, I said, all that's missing with you is to meet her, H-E-R.
Mm-hmm.
And she would embrace you, and you would follow into that world. We'd all say goodbye, because she can sing. She's great on stage. She's a killer bass player and entertainer. She just won all those awards here, and she emceed and everything, but she is a tremendous performer and talent. I think she's about 23, something like that. She graduated college during COVID, so very young.
How long is your lens that you're able to get so close without, you said, anybody, they don't see you taking that picture?
This one's probably 300.
300, okay.
Yeah, it's a three. That's about as far as I go, 300.
Okay.
And I can adjust it. I'm not shooting. I shoot with Micro Four Thirds Lumix.
Mm-hmm.
I've been basically shooting with Lumix since 2011, when Howard and us were together in New York City for my wife's 60th birthday, and we all went to Jazz at Lincoln Center for Herman Leonard's big night. And it was one of those great situations where I had bought a PC magazine, and I'm looking through it, talking about this new Micro Four Thirds and the Lumix and how it was going to change and radically do it. And the first thing I did was leave that table and run to B&H, and it was one. And I bought that camera. I think it was the G1, which had one lens, and I brought it back to Lincoln Center that night for the Herman Leonard stuff, and just started playing with it that night. And so I've been shooting Lumix and Micro Four Thirds. All this stuff is that, except for the film. So,
the film one.
Yeah, I love it. Nita Baker, that's film. And this was a great night, because she came after this performance. She came backstage and she talked to everybody, and she had us laughing, and she was just tremendous for the press.
For people who don't know cameras, can you explain a little bit about the Lumix and the 300 millimeter lens? How many feet or meters away does it allow you to be?
It just depends. I try to get as close as I can most of the time, and so that I don't have to use that lens all the time. But there are situations where certain halls tell you can't come any closer. They put you where you're going to be, so you have to work from there. Montreal Jazz Festival, we knew exactly where we were going to be side stage. most of the auditoriums, Massey Hall, the same thing here in Toronto. These festivals were a little different because we had a lot. This is why I love working at the festivals in the Caribbean, because we sort of had free reign, but we still only got the 3 songs. But we could move around stage, front stage, or near stage. This is a distance because this is at Garfield Sobers Auditorium. So I'm a good ways away when I took this from down front, but still we had to stay out of the way. Probably close. I'm probably in the aisle somewhere taking, but I didn't get to shoot many frames. But I love the, you know, Lumix came out and they were really the first ones to take charge. Also, the fact that Olympus have these great lenses that are adaptable to the Lumix. So I have a collection of both the Olympus and that. This is the Olympus 150, I think, and then I have a whole Olympus system, and then I have a whole Lumix system. And Lumix, some of those are Lycas. So some of the, you know, the 25 and right in that range are.
They're all mirrorless cameras, right?
Camera. I think the others are too heavy. I couldn't carry them.
Yeah.
Physically.
Yeah.
You know, and now everything has gone to this sort of basic sort of strategy.
Yeah,
now.
mirrorless. Yeah.
Mirrorless. Fabulous. This is I think this was in Toronto, and wow, she gave this concert at Nathan Phillips Square, and I've seen Aretha on other performances, and they were like half, weren't the greatest. But this was one where it was outdoors in a tent, and there's only so many people allowed. And she looked around in that tent and she thought, man, this is like a nightclub. She says, I love this. And she put on a performance that was beyond belief. It was the Aretha of your dreams, Bridge Over Troubled Water, the shuffles, the big band stuff. And you know, it just popped, everything she did this night. So there was no restrictions on what we would photograph. So this was one of the items that came out of that. At the end of this, she hung around. Never does this. She wanted to autograph and talk to people. So behind the tent and out on the street, she sat on the curb. She sat there for an hour, just talking and chatting with people. And then she looked at her band and she goes, McDonald's is all me. Let's go. So she went the whole band. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
He's a big star in the Caribbean. That's Arturo Tappan. And anybody that's ever been to the festivals in the Caribbean, he's on all of them. Because he's this perfect crossover artist that plays Caribbean style of jazz, which is sambas and merengue, and just the beats. But he has a style that it's a smooth jazz, sort of like Grover Washington and Najee, who is very popular down there. But I took this photo of him and I thought, oh man, this kind of got like a Sonny Rollins vibe to it, you know? So, and he loved this anyway, so.
Yeah.
This is interesting because this is the beginning of this young woman's career. This is Avril Lavigne, and she's an enormous pop star. So this is at the beginning of it in 2000, I think 2002 or 3, here at a concert down by the lake. And so she has this enormous career, and then she marries one of the players in another rock band, Nickelback, and disappears for a long time. And then the last 2 years she made a comeback and she's back on top, selling millions of records and touring again. Interesting.
Yeah.
But I always liked the photo. I just like, this is where she was at the time.
All the photos, including this one, seem to, you have captured the moment that you could, the viewer can almost hear the music. Perhaps because you're also a musician.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the next batch. Sorry, just 1 second here. And share.
Oh boy, it's one of my favorites. This is B.B. King and Lucille. It's 1997. And at Harborfront, this is back on film. Now this was great because I had two Nikon 2020s, I think that's what they were, two film cameras. And I was told you get 1 minute to shoot. I went, this is dowdy, nobody gets 1 minute. Now you get 1 minute. So I have both cameras, one in my hand, one around me, and I had some Ilford. And this is, what was Ilford 100, I think. No, it was Ilford maybe 400 or 1,000 or something. It was about as fast as you could go. And within 1 minute, I used both reels. I shot off both, everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would learn, and the last one of the bunch was that. Because that was at the end of that performance or whatever, or nearing a situation where he was going to move on to being normal BB. So BB comes out, BB understands the audience. So what he's going to do for the cameras and everybody, he's going to give you all the facial things. He's going to give you all the classic BB looks and moves. And then you get out of the way and he does his music. So he did all that. I've got, on the other roles that I have, I got every expression, every scene of BB King. And I know those from seeing them in books and everything, but this one I went, wow. When I got done, I said, this is the one I wanted, you know?
Nice.
Betty Levette. Betty Levette came through a few times, and this is like an artist that sort of made some waves in the 60s, I think with Stax Records or one of the Memphis labels. And then it didn't quite click over, but then went away and had another career as a mother and other things. And then was brought back out during that, you know, maybe 2010 and on. She got that part of her life out of the way, and she wanted to go back and tour again, much like Sharon Jones did the same, right? That, and she was fantastic because it was really that link to, like I said, Stax Records, that Memphis sound, that soul singing, the Carla Thomas, that era of music.
Do Your Duty was her, on Sunday's music, was her debut back in the 60s.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Beyonce. This is early Beyonce. Beyonce came to Canada when she was leaving, was it Destiny's Child or wherever the group was she had. It starts her first tour as such. And so in producing her album, she hooked up with Best Buy. And Best Buy financed this concert at Dundas Square here in Toronto. And so Christine and I went down and we go, gotta get photos of this person, gotta get a shot. Well, there were thousands of people, you couldn't get near it. And there was like 4 guys, young guys, and they brought chairs and folding chairs. And so they had their cameras and they didn't know what to do with the cameras. So Christine cut a deal. She goes, I'll set your cameras up if you just let us take a few frames. So we took their cameras and set them up for them. And they said, okay, go. So I only got maybe 3 images. Then Christine got up to hers and we're out of there. And I went back and I went, wow, that's all I wanted was this shot. And what's beautiful about it is this dress she wore all summer. This was her dress for the summer. You saw her on Oprah. You saw her on every TV show. And it's like a yellow print dress in color. It's beautiful. But it's her at the beginning of all this. And it's just, I love the picture. You know, the energy.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So good. Ellen DeGeneres, she was on that show. This is Big Sam Williams. And man, he puts on the show from New Orleans. And what can I say? He plays the heck out of trombone. And he gave me this. He just gave us all that image. And then a few years later, I sent it to him and he just sent me a letter. He goes, best photo ever taken of me. Just the best. You know? But you know, I had the wide angle. You know, I was, you know, I was no more than
up close. Yeah.
I was no more than a yard from him. So I could see the bone, I could see the slide coming out. And I went, this is it. It was just getting the expression, you know, and that's how he is on stage, and all muscle too. I started at what is now Jazz FM in Toronto. Before it became Jazz FM, it was called CJRT. And I created this series with another piano player friend of mine, Joe Seeley. And it was called Joe Seeley's Duets. And I used to produce this every week. And we'd have an artist come in, and this is Bill Mays was in. And just a great pianist and a great human being. And the beauty of that was pack the camera. Whatever camera I had, I made sure I photographed the artists that came through there. And this is just one because not only this, he showed up with his music, but he showed up with what he was reading, which I thought was in his reading glasses. So I thought this was kind of like a special image. This is the wonderful Bobby Bruff. Bobby's been here, I guess, performing for 50 plus years. He's about 80 years old now, and he still plays great. And this is him live in a club, and he's just a tremendous musician. So this is at the Rex. This is our longest running jazz room in Toronto. Bob Magidson, he's playing with, I think he was playing with either the Dizzy Gillespie Big Band or Roy Hargrove or one of those bands like that, which had a bunch of all-stars from James Moody in it, Ernie Watts and all of them. And I just liked where his brain was at the time, where his mind was at music. He's looking at the charts, right?
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that it goes right over the cymbal. The middle of the cymbal connects with the bass in such a way. So it creates a nice graphic all the way around. This is like maybe a year ago or so. This is Bobby D. Blackburn. And Bobby, when I first came to Canada, was playing great organ in a club on Yonge Street, which was our main street. And he had that gig for 20 or 30 years. You remember back, there was a time when, whether you were in Philly, New York City, or whatever, their afternoon happy hour. And musicians played there, usually had an organ trio. And that organist knew everybody that came in town. And so all the Black artists would come, whoever they were, great jazz musicians would come and do the jam sessions with Bobby. And so this is a concert celebrating his many, many years in music. He's in his 80s now too, but this was him coming back, getting the big respect. Of course, it's Bobby McFerrin. And this was in Montreal. I interviewed him. He was my second interview in 1988 for the Jazz Report magazine. He came by the house with his wife at the time. And I had a radio show, and I just sort of discovered him on record. I think he was on Electra before he moved on to Juno. And I thought this guy was amazing. And to have him in my house and then to see him in performance, he's always been great. Oh, Booker T. Jones. Now, my wife says to me, she goes, you should have put the one of him at the organ instead. But then I thought, the organ's there, but he loves to play guitar. And true to life, he was terrific in performance. Whether he played guitar or played organ, he had another organist with him and stuff. I just like the juxtaposition of both of them together, and the fact that both instruments mean something to him. The big part of his life. We know his organ player from Booker T and the MGs and Steve Cropper and all those hit records. Oh, this is Bootsy Collins and his dad. Loudest concert ever. This was in Toronto at City Hall. Loudest concert. He had 10 amps, 10 giant Marshall amps on stage, and Christine and I, we always, when we did concerts and shoot together, she would take one side of the stage, I would take the other side of the stage. The manager of Bootsy comes up to us and he says, before we're photographing, he goes, do you have a heart condition? And I looked at each other and I go, oh geez, I just had some work done. He goes, I'm just going to tell you because I want you to watch for that. When Bootsy goes down on one leg, he's going to hit this note that'll pop your heart. So you may want to get out of the way. And sure to life, we saw him going down to that one lake. Christine and I ran out of the building, and he hit that note, and all the patio stones rumbled. Right,
Wow.
but it was a great concert.
Yeah.
Oh, Brad Meldown, just fantastic. I photographed him solo piano concerts years before. Was extraordinary. So this is him in his sort of fusion time. I guess about 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago. One of the greatest young players out there. From here, Brandy Disterhef. She's been in New York and Brooklyn for years now, plays with everybody. We work together, many gigs here, all kinds of gigs, but determined to really take herself somewhere in the jazz world, and she has done it, you know. Serious musician. This is just one of those her and her moment kind of situations.
Yeah, she has a great album. I'm trying to think of it. It's called Debut. That's about 10 or so years ago. That's really amazing.
I think it's on Just in Time or something.
Yes. Yeah, recorded in Canada.
Yeah. Boy, oh boy, this is Brian Barlow, and I came across this recently, and I did an interview with Brian a few days ago. We had the great Guido Basil passed away at 85 years old. One of the finest horn trumpet players ever. And Guido and Brian were best friends. Brian has a 125-acre farm outside of Toronto. Guido had a 30-acre farm, and they lived in that vicinity together. We're just did everything, hung together and everything. Great arranger. His daughter is Emily Claire Barlow, wonderful singer. She has a career. Big band arranger. Guy was in the studio. He was in the Boss Brass, but he was in the studio from, I guess, the 70s up with Rob McConnell and everybody, Mo Kaufman. Every kind of recording session, everything, he was the drummer on it, or percussion. So fantastic man. Yeah. Oh, Brian Seltzer of, what were they called? Cats, something Cats. He had a huge records, Rockabilly. But he had, this is his big band. And this is in Quebec City, at the Quebec City Festival several years back. Guy was an amazing rockabilly guitarist, and he had a presence and a look about him. And when I saw this, I went, "Oh man, this is a guy standing out. He's dynamic looking. Everything about him, the clothes have a glow. He has a glow about him, and the playing was just fantastic." Bruce Springsteen. This is another one where I got upstairs in the booth, and I'm not supposed to be photographing, but you know, as photographers, you do what you want to do. But I'm way up in the balcony in a box, and I've got the Lumix, and the only way I can get this shot, even with the 300 lens, is you can double it up. The image quality degrades a certain amount, but you can double the thing and make it a 600. So this is once there's some really fine images of it, but it took a lot of work restoring this digitally to get it so that it doesn't break up. You know what I mean? But
reduce the noise and stuff. Yeah,
because you don't want to have it. You don't want to have the artist look like rubber because of the AI work, right, with Topaz and things.
Yeah.
So you try to find that medium where there's a sharpness and everything, and you can still keep it. And I was able to do it on some of this stuff. So, and amazing performer. The video that I made is up on YouTube, and it's amazing. You know, I did a video where they carry his body throughout the building. You know, they're just washed with hands, but it's a beautiful. And I was just at this vantage point where I could just do this and nobody bothered me. Bucky Pizzarelli, and John Clayton. This is up at Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival back in, I think, 2003. I was invited out for the week for this by Virginia Wicks. Published this. It used to be for Dizzy Gillespie, Lionel Hampton, and another fantastic woman. She brought me out there, and I got to hang for the weekend in maybe 4 or 5 days, and I had free reign to photograph. So he was fantastic. Oh man, this was Buddy Guy. God, he was down somewhere, probably along the lake and stuff. But this is in the 90s. This is on film. This is another one which took a lot of work just to restore and bring to life off of film, because I wasn't the best with my reads on light and stuff. This is a wonderful upcoming Americana Canadian blues band, and they just took it upon themselves just to tour the world. And they launched just prior to COVID, and then COVID killed everything, but boy, did they stay together. They figured out ways to rehearse and everything, and they had been all over Europe, all over everywhere. And they go out there, and she's like hardcore soul. She's just like the hardcore soul singer, just really, really fantastic. So this is the University of Toronto. They wanted some promo photos, so I took them out there and caught them there. Oh, this is great. This is
Candido.
Oh yeah. So Candido came to Toronto, and he was part of our National Jazz Awards many years ago. And he was there with Jane Bennett. And he was in his 80s then. And so he says to me before he left, he goes, "Can you take me to Massey Hall?" And I said, "Sure." And he goes, "Can you photograph me at Massey Hall?" He says, "I don't need to go outside. I need to go out where that sign is." He goes, "I played there in 1954 with Stan Kenton. And I've never been back." So we took the cab ride over, jumped out of the cab, took a few photos, and put this together and sent them off to him. And he goes, "Oh man, loved it." Of course, this is Cassandra Wilson. Photographed her several times. This is probably early on film in Toronto. I don't know. I think she was with Terence Blanchard on this trip. But this is back when she was just playing festivals everywhere at the time. So.
Yeah, I think it was the 2003, 2004. She was also with Terence Blanchard at Montreal Jazz Fest.
That's right.
She was doing there. Yeah,
they were doing the tour together.
Yeah.
It was a great combination. CeCe Winans. This is from I think 2019 or 18. I love the Winans family, and just to have her in Toronto doing her thing. This is outdoors in a free concert. I could do everywhere. I was right by the stage, and this is the street going down is really a beautiful, exclusive looking street. So you get the lights, the lanterns, and the whole building effect. And I loved her energy. She's just a lovely person too. This is Los Lobos. These are Rosa. Second loudest band I've ever been in front of. Like to kill me, but what a performance. You know, as soon as they hit the stage, it was Tex-Mex, right? It was just love the music, love it. And this guy is something special. This is outdoors free concert right where Beyonce played, and not long before or after, in Chaka Khan. I've photographed Chaka Khan a few times and actually had her record one of my songs back in 1980, an album called Naughty. Me and Deborah Ash wrote a song together called Nothing's Gonna Take You Away. And she recorded it, and on that, and singing background on that is Luther Vandross and I think an 18-year-old Whitney Houston, and the Average White Band is the band on it. So there's my songwriting career right there. I didn't need another one. But she looks beautiful, and it was one of my favorite performances of her, because some of the times that I saw her, it's just too loud. You know, it's just expects the bands are too loud. This is outdoors, and you can just it was just fun.
Sue says she loves the microphone with the glitter.
That's her own phone. So she brought the phone, you know. Charnette Moffett. This is with Stanley Jordan. I think this is probably in Barbados or somewhere. I just love the look of him. I photographed him when he also came here with McCoy Tyner Big Band. And subbed in on an emergency and sight read the charts that night and blew McCoy away, blew everybody into place away. A tremendous bass player. Christian McBride, love Christian. I photographed Christian the same way at Massey Hall many years ago when he first started, and he was up playing the top of the Senator. And I met him and I did an interview with him, and I said, "What do you want to do?" And he goes, "Take me to Massey Hall." And we went and photographed him all in front of Massey Hall and did that. But this is him coming back maybe 5 or 6 years ago with his own big band. Just fantastic musician. Yes, my man, Chucho Valdez. I think this is in Montreal. I've interviewed him, talked to him through the years. Kind of runs the jazz scene in Cuba. I mean, everything goes through Cuba. But just tremendous musician. I saw him. Might be with Irakiri when they got Irakiri back together again for a special tour. So, Colin, what's his name?
James.
Colin James, yeah. Great blues, rock guitars. Been out there rolling on his own from Canada for a long time. Corey Henry, this is from last summer. I love Corey Henry. He's one of my favorite keyboards. Pure, just right on. Snarky Puppy, and then of course it's him with his Apostles. I love everything about him. His organ playing is beyond this world. His soloing, his keyboard playing, he is the guy. He's now. Everything he does just blows me away. Darlene Love, she was touring with, I think there were 3 other singers. It was kind of like an oldies thing at TD Jazz, but boy, could she still could sing. Dave Koz down in Barbados. This is back, I don't know, 1997 or so. And this is back with that box camera with a Rolleiflex. And he's still hooked up on this thing, man, in the medium format and film. And I took him next to the building, which is in Farley Hill, where, God, was it? A movie was made in 1957 with Harry Belafonte and Dorothy Dandridge. It was filmed there.
Carmen Jones?
No, it's, what's it called? Islands, something, Islands in Stream or something like one of those movies. But I took him to that place and photographed him there.
Okay.
Oh, that's David Foster and Gordon Lightfoot. This is at David Foster's event. Just to have Gordon Lightfoot still here with us is a miracle in itself. So these two giants of music together is just special. David himself, tremendous musician. I like this just because of the fact the light was fantastic. I could tell it from when I was sitting, the light on his face, light behind him, everything. And of course, that's David Sanborn. And this is TD Jazz in Toronto. I don't know. David Sanborn, I have more albums than anything. Dave Varela, early on here, he came from Cuba. He was here with Jane Bennett, played our festival, caught him there. The next photo was, so Dee Dee Bridgewater, this is in the early 90s, mid 90s or something. So Dee Dee comes to town, and I don't know if she was on a promotional tour with Verve or whatever it was, but we had lunch together. And I brought along the Nikon I had at the time and a 28 with a 28 lens. And I friggin' laughed so doggone hard. She just let me photograph whatever I wanted to do. You do whatever you want to do. You're a good looking guy, so you take whatever you want to. And we had lunch and a great interview. And this is the results, because the mood she was in was just fantastic.
Yeah.
Delfeo, famous, all the trombones, Slide Hampton, a whole mess of them were together as part of the TD Jazz Fest, and I got photos of all of them. He's a tremendous and a really, really nice human being on top of it. In the moment, Dana Crowell. This is early on. This is 97, I think, or no, this is 2000. This is still early on in her career, and this is down at the waterfront at Mosen Amphitheater. And this is one of those things like where the same place I did B.B. King, where you're giving like, 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and then thrown out, unmercifully thrown out of the place. But I come away with some things that are at the beginning of it all that were kind of really nice. This is one of her look at her band. I think Russell Malone was with her at the time as such, but it was night sky, which was beautiful. This is just a couple years ago. I was in this musical called 88 Keys, which traced the history of the piano. And this is Divine Brown and Thompson Egbo. I think he's from Nigeria. And I spent a lot of time with him. Rehearsals, performances. We did this musical twice. And this is them playing Nina Simone, Sinnerman together. So it's just a fantastic moment between the two because he's got that riff going for Sinnerman. And she tore it up. Donna Grannis, blues guitarist, was a young, this is her at the beginning of it all here in Toronto. And then one day, Prince discovers her. One of the young women in the Third Eyed Girl band that he was putting together had seen her on YouTube playing. And Prince called her. And from that point, she became an integral part of everything that Prince did, even to the point right now that her husband sort of manages Prince's estate. But a wonderful, wonderful guitarist. Dougie Richardson, he passed away long ago. One of the first musicians I met in Canada in 1969. When I tried to put together a band, I hired him immediately, and he goes, I don't even know you, don't even have a gig. And I said, okay, but we'll be friends. And we were friends for life. Great tenor sax player, musician and artist and everything. And I caught him, this is probably going back 20 years ago. And I just loved his expression. I always told him, I said, you have the original face, because he had a face that was like indigenous. It was African, it was indigenous. It just had the whole world in it, with his dreadlocks and everything. I mean, he had a look that was like no other. I told him, I said, there's only one person that looks like you, guy. So you're a lucky guy.
Yeah.
Dr. John. So Dr. John, I had interviewed prior to this and over the phone, and I could not make any sense out of a word he said. And it was for a cover story for the Jazz Report. So they didn't want to lose the cover story. They said, well, he's coming to Toronto to play. And why don't you just go up to this hotel room? We'll set it up. So I did. I went up to this hotel room and got this phenomenal interview with him. It was fantastic. He was totally relaxed, had a Sherman cigarettes they're smoking, and writing out the set. The band said he's got a chart of all his songs, and he's planning the set for that night. So I asked him, can I photograph him? He goes, do whatever you want to do. So that's what I did. Same way I caught him by the window. This is Dwayne Blackburn. He's the son of the celebrated Other Blackburn, the father. Tremendous singer, organist, and musician here in Toronto. Carrying on the tradition. Duke Robillard at the Silver Dollar was our hottest blues club. I used to go there, and anytime I could get a chance and photograph the blues artists, because there was always a stream of mid-level blues artists coming through, and all these artists would come through. Earth, Wind, and Fire. This is at the David Fett. No, this is probably outdoors. This is outdoors TD Jazz Festival. Great performance. This is in an album that I co-produced with my friend, and it was a tribute to Wes Montgomery. And this is Ed Bicker in the studio. Wow, what a great guitarist. And this is a situation where, on one hand, I got the camera, on the other hand, I'm trying to produce the session. And we had 6 guitarists over 2 days do 2 tunes each, honoring Wes Montgomery. A tune that you wrote for Wes Montgomery, and then a tune that Wes Montgomery had played on a previous recording. And it's his playing on the recording is great. This is one of my earliest photos. This is 1974 when Jamie Aversold hired me to be part of teach beginners at his jazz camp in Northern Illinois. And
Oh.
this is where I brought along the Instamatic. And we were playing, I got to know him a bit. We had a lot of fun just playing Frisbee in the parking lot. And so at the end of that, he pulled out his cigar and started smoking it. I said, can I just grab this? And I took a photo. But then I also took photos of Joanne Brett Keenan and Woody Shaw and others, which still need some work on. Elio Villafranca. This is at a thing he did with Jane Bennett at a concert he put together, that she put together with the Cuban Masters. Brought all these Cuban Toronto, phenomenal scene. So this is the rehearsal thing. And so she let me come over here and just photograph at will during the rehearsal. This is one of my favorites. This is Elvin Jones at TD Jazz, or Demoria at the time. This is 2000. And great guy. They just sort of let us do what we wanted at that time. There was no get out of the way thing, but this one kind of stuck through because it was different than any other kind of photo that I had taken. And I was able to get in a position where you got his face between the drums and the stick. Everything was just right about this photo for me. Yeah. I've made this into posters too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this is the guy that created ska. This is Ernest Ranglin.
Ernest Ranglin, yeah.
My Boy Lollipop, which was considered 1960-62 the first ska record. He created the skank, the upchuck on the guitar. That was his thing. And so he played with Monty Alexander for years. He recorded with every great Jamaican artist. He's on so many hit records from the islands. So we did an album together maybe 7 years ago, and he's in Toronto. And I played keyboard on about 6 songs of his. And every day, he's in his 80s here, every day he was writing music. He was writing charts like old style, you know, just sitting at the, you know, smoke a J, write some charts, you know, and he was writing all the parts down. So I caught this. Lovely man. One of my favorite human beings, Ernie Andrews. Ernie Andrews and John Clayton. Ernie Andrews was my kind of singer, my kind of jazz singer. And I had become familiar, even more familiar with him with the Philip Morris Big Band, Gene Harris. And when I got the chance to meet him in person, I had to tell him about it. Then I brought him to Toronto at a concert and got to play with him, put together a big band to play behind him. And then we went out and spent time on the streets buying food, looking for drinks, doing everything, just had a night out on the town together. But I just love this guy. And then, of course, there was the documentary, South Central, I think he did, where he takes you for a nice walk and tour of the old jazz haunts. I'd already seen that. I knew everything about the guy, right? He was one of the early things when Nancy Wilson was recorded with Cannonball and them for Cap. Great story behind this. We cut a deal. She wouldn't let nobody photograph her. Esperanza. So somebody says, "Come on, Bill's a great photographer. You gotta let him photograph you." So she calls me over. She goes, "Here's the deal. You can photograph as much as you want, but you got to make sure you take photographs with me in these shoes, because I want to send this back to the designer, show that I wore these on stage." And so it worked out.
Good.
Yeah. Jerry Burton, this is at Kerner Hall. A big jazz night. I can't remember who all else was on that bill. I think maybe possibly Branford Marsalis, but I got there, they let me in for the sound check. So I could move around, photograph the artist. I love sound checks, right? So this is one of those great times. Gary
Clark Jr.
Yeah, Gary Clark Jr. This is just maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Amazing. Yeah. Just an amazing artist. And you know,
he was here too in Chicago around that time, 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, that was the tour. But what I liked about the stage, a lot of the times, you know, when you're photographing, an artist standing there is one thing, but boy, if you can get those graphics right. This was a thing where I was seeing what was behind me, and then I saw this strip going across the TD Jazz where the staff was moving right into the speakers, and I thought, there's something different than just shooting an artist. I could have photographed him from this side or over here, but I really liked where this laid, where he was in his image.
Yeah. Danica is asking you to comment on the way the light and the detail, the sharpness of the image, and how the reflection is playing off the instrument.
I'm really, 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 really conscious of light. I'm a light chaser. I know there's certain situations I go to, I want to give up because there's no light. And pretty much that's what you're going to get. But if you watch the artists where they're moving constantly, there's going to be a light somewhere. You sort of have to freeze them there at that spot. You have to be focused on and waiting for them to move into the light, you know? And what I'm also conscious to is where the eyes are at. If the head is down, then there's going to be a shadow and you're not going to get much in the face. So it requires a lot of patience to watch that. The sharpness, I don't do any post sharpening. I don't have to, because the lenses now are so good that, you know, there was a time when everybody was over sharpening, and you could see that in all the images. And I did the same thing early on. When I went back to these images, I started over and I just left them alone. I just processed them in such a way that I could restore them the best I could. But I didn't have to go back and do much sharpening, you know, very little, because I think there's a tendency. It's like when you go through the 80s and you look at all the pop art photography of all the art that was out there and all the commercials, there was these gobs of color and this and that flashes, and it had a certain look to it, and then you get tired of it. I think we got really tired of the over sharpening. We learned to understand image that you get it while you're there. So it's where I'm focused, and I focus on the eyes, you know, like I should do. But I may not have you know, if somebody says I got 3 minutes, I'm going to be patient with that 3 minutes. I'm just not going to shoot a bunch of shot off. I need to get a certain shot, a certain image. So if I walk away with 5 or 6 frames and one of them is right, I'm happy.
Right. I think we're running a little over time, and I was hoping to show you my sidebar here of how many photos, and have you choose a few. Is the sidebar? Can you guys see the sidebar?
I see it along the sideline. Yeah.
Yeah. I can make it a contact sheet too.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
There you go.
So these were the ones we went over.
Yeah.
So Bill, one of the things that I keep being struck by is how well you use backgrounds and also are aware of texture in these people's clothes or patterns in their clothes. And, you know, at first, a lot of these shots seem fairly straightforward, but then the more I look at them, the more detail I find. And yet the detail never obscures from your subjects. Your subjects really pop out.
That was a discussion that we used to have with Paul Hoffman when I was apprenticing with him, because I spent a lot of time with his classic photos, and I get to hold those prints in my hand. And we cried about the fact there were too many microphone stands on stage in front of people. And so my thing was the only way I could get that, I would first when I got there to do the photographic concert, the first thing I saw was what the background was going to be. So I knew where I wanted to try to my best to place the artist. All right. I knew what my f-stop was going to be, because if it was too much in the background, I knew I wanted to blur it and use the background as art. Try to create the fact that it's a painting, right? It's something that complements the foreground. So the other thing was just to always be aware of waiting for that movement. Wait to the person. I'm looking at Hayden Neal right here. I waited till Hayden got away from the stand and took the microphone off the stand and then turned a certain way. Yeah, I waited for that. you know, because he was against the sky. But if you looked and saw, if we moved down, there's a whole band there. And there's a whole band, just, you know, 1,000 microphones, right? But he moved to one position, and I waited until he got into that spot. And then I said, I've got the sky in the background, and it's just white, this cloudy sky. I got him now. So it's those kind of things that you sort of have to, you're always thinking about the backgrounds. And even when you're there with a group of other professional photographers, you know the same thing is going through their mind, you know? And if it's not, it's something that should be going through their mind, because you're just walking away with a photo. And as Paul used to call it, he used to call it big game hunting, you know? And
Did you take most of these on assignment or for the Jazz Report, or
on my own, for myself.
on your own, just for fun, mostly?
But it wasn't just for fun, because we had a magazine.
Right.
We had the magazine,
Yeah.
but also I've been writing for publications and so forth for years. And yeah, and sometimes for the artists, but also just to be part of this. Montreal, the same thing, Christine. I used to do dispatches from the festival every day, and then I would post them with the photos and write a piece about the festival. So they always had a purpose to it, right? This was our God right here, you know.
Is this that evening you mentioned in New York?
No, this is this was a wonderful celebration in Montreal, celebrating him. They're giving him an award in Montreal Jazz Festival. And this is just after Christine won the award for Jazz Photo of the Year of Hank Jones for the Jazz Association. So we're all in the press area, and he's going to be honored. He's sitting in a chair, and I don't want to bother the guy. But somebody tells him, well, the girl that won the award for the Jazz Journalists, so she's here too. She's in the press room. He goes, well, I want to meet her. And so Christine's out of her mind. She goes, he wants to meet me. So they get together, and he gives her the biggest hug and kiss. And I've got that photo. It's a fantastic photo. And they became like the best friends. You know, he just wanted to take Chris around everywhere with him. You know, she's got a great personality. And it was a situation where they showed all his photographs, did a whole reel, and he discussed how he took the photographs. Pretty much what we're doing right now, where they show the black and whites, and he talked about the history of the photos and stuff. And while he's there, I said, I can't resist this, you know, so.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Bill, for sharing your wonderful journey, life journey with us through photographs. Do we have any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. And again, apologies for the early Zoom glitch. We'll see you again next month. Take care.
Well, let me just say thanks to everybody, Howard, to you, and to all for having me in. I really, truly appreciate it. It's been wonderful.
Bill, it's fantastic. Really interesting to see your work in this way, and so much, so prodigious, so prolific, and so sharp. And you're documenting your scene as well as, you know, showing who's coming through, and beautiful, and so consistent and really high level. Thank you.
We all want to be there. So you set the bar, Howard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.